Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our third Facilitators Q&A webinar, hosted by the Max Dupree Center for Leadership. My name is Ryan Gutierrez, and I'm the Senior Director for the Center. At the Max Dupree Center for Leadership, we imagine a world in which Christian leaders across industries and seasons of life are deeply formed as disciples of Jesus as they wisely seek the very best for the people and systems entrusted to their care. A key phrase in this statement that's very important to us is across seasons of life. We believe in the potential for Christians to be faithful and fruitful in every season of life. For us, we break up these seasons as first third, right, the second third, and the third third of life. We know that each of these seasons brings its own unique challenges and its own unique opportunities. And so at the center, we aim to equip leaders to meet these challenges and take advantage of these opportunities, whether they're in the first third, they're in the second third, or in the third third of life. And so I am excited to focus in this conversation on both the challenges and the very real and large opportunities for those who are in the third third of life. Let me first start by expressing my sincere gratitude for those of you who are here now, participating in this conversation live, and also those who are going to watch the recording. You are the ones doing the good and hard work of gathering small groups in your churches, in your organizations, in your senior living centers, and your communities, creating space for those in the third third to connect, to ask hard questions, but really to catch God's vision for his people, that they can flourish and be fruitful into old age. And so without you, we would just be making products and resources that no one would see. So thank you. But really, thank you for trusting us, and thank you for leading your people well. I'm very excited to facilitate this dialogue with you and to equip you so that you can hopefully equip your people to flourish in the third third of life. And I'm very excited and grateful to be joined by my two friends and colleagues, Dr. Mark Roberts and Dr. Hilda Davis. Mark is a senior fellow for the Max Dupree Center for Leadership. Here, he focuses primarily on the spiritual development and thriving of third third leaders. He is the principal writer of our daily devotional, Life for Leaders, and is the catalyst and instructor for our two courses, Flourishing in the Third Third of Life and Purpose in the Third Third of Life. Hilda is the founder of Creative Wellness. She has combined her vocational interest in spirituality and wellness to offer programs and ministries in congregations, government and private agencies, and educational institutions. She's published a book for women titled Live Healthy and Be Well, Create an Action Plan, which offers Bible stories, meditation, and activities that lead to a wellness action plan. Hilda holds a PhD in religion and psychology from Vanderbilt University, is an ordained deacon in the United Methodist Church, and is a proud mother and grandmother. She contributes significantly to Dupree's Third Third initiative through writing articles and leading various third cohorts. Mark and Hilda, thank you both for being here, and welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. And hey, Hilda, I just need to say my daughter is now getting a PhD in education from Vanderbilt. So we're
Awesome.
crossing over there.
Exactly.
I know.
She will love it. My minor is education.
She is. She's having a great time. And as you know, Vandy's really strong in education. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of fun.
It is very much woohoo, go Vandy.
I love that. Love the connections. Again, thank you both for being here. Just let everyone in to know what we're doing. I'm going to tee up Mark and Hilda right now with a few questions based on what you all submitted when you registered for the webinar. We got a good set of questions that came in and a lot of overlap. So it was really helpful to see some themes emerge across multiple people and what they were experiencing or wondering as you all were leading these courses or leading different third initiatives in your churches and communities. As Mark and Hilda start talking and answering the questions, and they're going to have their own dialogue and maybe even a little bit of back and forth, feel free to put any additional questions in the chat. If something comes up or they say something that sparks, I want to know more about that. Please use the chat feature or the Q&A feature on Zoom As often as you would need, or as often as you like. Trish, who's hidden but managing all things for us on this webinar, she'll be responding to those questions or feeding them to me, and I can feed them to Mark and Hilda as we're talking, or again, after we finish some of the preset questions. With some extra time, I can ask more questions from the chat just to keep our dialogue going and make sure we're really answering the questions that you all have. All right, enough from me. Enough from me. Let's get to the first question. So a lot of questions came in wanting to help think about retirement and how they can help lead people well who are transitioning into retirement. So this is a little bit of a two-part question. What guidance would you give someone who is in the transition process from full-time work into retirement? And one of your recommendations might be they should get a retirement mentor, which is the article Hilda wrote recently for us, which was really great. So a second question is, what, in your opinion, makes a good retirement mentor? So what's good guidance for someone entering that season? And what do you look for in a retirement mentor?
Hilda, that's your question. That's a great question.
Okay, thanks, Mark and Ryan. And welcome to all of you. I am delighted and encouraged by your presence here. You're doing a great work, and I trust that as you're feeding them, that you're also being fed. I know that that has been my experience with facilitating, guiding these courses, that I am enriched as a result. And actually, the term retirement mentor from my experience came out of one of the courses, Flourishing in the Third. As the participants, the members of the cohort talked about their experiences and tying into the content in Flourishing in the Third, Mark encourages that we have mentors and become mentor. It just seemed a natural fit that retirement should also be an opportunity for a mentor. And so I credit with that class with encouraging or it emerging out of that experience. And there are a few articles on the Dupree.org that are a series on retirement and retirement mentor. What makes a good retirement mentor is the third of the three articles. And one of the people I interviewed for that article said that spontaneity, change, and growth are her core values. And those are the values she will hope to bring into retirement. So my short answer is a retirement mentor supports your core values. So as you become or seek, look for that connection where you both have values around retirement, around finances, around what is the good life, what is flourishing, that those are supported mutually.
That's great. You know, I was challenged by your article. Partly you'd asked me to actually contribute something to it. And
That's right.
So I had to really think about this. And a part of what I thought is, although I'm in this process myself of transitioning from full-time work to something called retirement, I wouldn't say I've had an official mentoring kind of relationship with somebody to do this, but I had two thoughts. And one I put in your article, and the other I'll mention here. In the article, I talked about the relationship I had with my own grandfather, my mother's father. I mean, I was young. I didn't think of him as a retirement mentor, but in my season of life now, the way he lived in retirement has just been a great model for me. And that was a lot about, he certainly enjoyed not having to work as many hours or go, you know, away every day. But in retirement, he continued to use his gifts in service to people in a wide variety of ways. And that was really very I learned a lot from him and want to continue to do that. The other person I name as a retirement mentor has no idea that I'm going to name him, but it is actually a member of the Dupree Center Advisory Board, Uli Chi. And I mean, Uli's been a mentor about a lot of things, but he retired officially several years ago from a company that he had built. And he is living a rich and full life, much of it in volunteering, leading boards, helping the Dupree Center. And so he continues to use his gifts in ways that I think are certainly fulfilling to him and wonderful for others. But also, and the thing that I'm most impressed with Uli is his ability to say no to things with grace and clarity and kindness. So I'd ask him to do something and he'd think about it and come back and say, you know, I don't think I can do that. And here's why. Right. I just was so struck by the wisdom that he has to invest his life well and not become overcommitted, but also not just sit around and do nothing. And so his living, it's about living with meaning. It's about living with wisdom. He's written a wonderful book on wisdom. And it's also about his investment in people like me and others in the Dupree Center. And there's some of us who just have received so much from him. So he may not know he's my retirement mentor. He's not even, we're almost the same age, but he is my retirement mentor.
And Mark, I just want to add to let everyone know that in addition to the 3 retirement mentor series that I wrote, Mark has multiple articles on retirement on that same website that are helpful, including one that says retirement is changing again. How does that affect you? And retirement continues to morph. And so I think part of it is just being able to relax about the idea that retirement is in flux. And how is that different from the rest of our lives? We continue to evolve and be in flux. And that's the nature of retirement. I don't have a single the answer. And I'm glad because it allows everyone to come to their own sense of what works for them.
Yeah, it's a good word. Yes. One of the things that is important to know, and you've said it, Hilda, is that there are so many different retirement stories now, and increasingly. And of course, some folks don't retire. Some don't because they can't afford to. Others because they love their work and want to keep working. Many who retire expect to do work of some kind, paid work, after retirement. In fact, that's super common. Just some people go part-time and on and on and on. I mean, just different stories. So one of the things we need to know and remember is that there isn't just one simple, clear story of you work full-time until you're 65, and then on that day you retire, and then the rest of your life you don't. I have one friend, a guy named Dale Bruner. Some of you might know it. He's a wonderful Bible scholar who was the kind of guy, retired on the day he turned 65, but then he has spent the last 27 years of his life doing what he loves, which is studying scripture and writing commentaries on it. And so a lot of variety, and that's important to know, because as we work with folk, there are going to be about as many different stories of retirement as there are people we're working
with. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's great. We did have someone in the chat ask if either of you had a book recommendation on retirement. Again, specific sources and stuff. We can also follow up in our email after this, providing more links and lists. If either of you had something on top of your mind where it's just like, yep, this is the one that's been really helpful for me, or I find, happy for you to say it.
Well, there are 2 articles in Retirement Mentor, a new type of mentor that I have enjoyed. In fact, one of them, out of all the sources I've read recently, is the one that mentions Retirement Mentor. So, and I noticed that Trish put it in the chat,
Mm,
Retirement Mentor, a new type of mentor. There are
mm,
two books that I found helpful.
mm. That's great. Well, I'll mention two. Um, one, and both of these people are actually people that somewhere in the Dupree Center archives, I did a webinar conversation with each of them. And so one book is by a man named Jeff Haanen, Haanen, called An Uncommon Guide to Retirement. Now, the bizarre thing about this book is he wrote it at age 40. I always, but he did because he was seeing what was going on with his parents and their friends. He listened well to people. He has a really great theological understanding of it. Used to be head of the Denver Institute of Faith work. And so um, for a 40-year-old, he's got a lot of solid wisdom on retirement. The second book is a man who's now in his 80s. So he's in that, but it's a book called The Retirement Reformation. And Bruce Bruinsma, it's spelled Bruinsma, and he has a long story, but his book is filled with both lots of biblical wisdom, but then lots of experience. He's helped a lot of people with the sort of the financial side of retirement, and Bruce does an amazing thing. Now we have a webinar of him, and if you watch it, it's absolutely hilarious because we were having technical difficulties. It was during COVID, we couldn't be, so we were meeting in a church sanctuary, and all their lights went out. So if you watch this thing, you basically see this shadowy, scary looking Bruce talking. But anyway, but his book is great. Retirement Reformation has some of the most wisdom. So I'll stop there. I probably read like 25 books on retirement now, but I won't bore anybody further.
Well, that's great. I love hearing that. And thank you for the questions.
Yeah.
Keep them coming. And thank you, Trish, for putting those links in there. We'll keep resourcing people in the conversation. Again, we'll also gather these and put them in an email. Our next question is actually kind of related to what both Hilda and Mark, you were talking about retirement. There's no one retirement path, right? And someone hits 65 and they stop. So right now I'm leading a group in my church through Flourishing and through Purpose. We just finished Flourishing. We're about to start Purpose in the third of life. And there's someone who's thinking about retirement, but has seen people fail retirement and is wondering about that. I have a woman who has retired, but basically now works for her daughter just to help her in her own small business and is almost fully employed doing that, but it's just giving of her time. And then some people who have been retired for 20 years and now are far removed from work. And again, we say third, but there actually is a variety of experiences of this season of life. And it can be a very prolonged season of life with a lot of different inflection points. And so what a handful of people raised in their questions was, based on these different inflection points, right? If you run one of these classes for those in the third, you might have people who are navigating retirement, some people who are navigating a season of vacation or a season of leisure, others who are navigating the loss of friends and family, while some might actually be approaching the end of life or the end of life for their spouse or people they love. And all of them come to the group, and they're all kind of represented in this third demographic. So the question is, how can we lead groups well, keeping this variety of experiences in mind?
Mark, you can lead this time.
Oh, okay. So a part of me wants to say, well, that's impossible. So it kind of is. But the most important thing is for leaders to recognize what you just said. I mean, and there's research on this. I mean, research that finds the most diverse sort of cohort of people in our country are older adults, because we have the same diversities of other people, but then you'll have 90-year-olds who are doing amazing, healthy, their brains are great, they're active, and you have 62-year-olds who have early onset Alzheimer's. I mean, you have huge diversity of life experience within the ordinary diversities. So knowing that and acknowledging that is just, that is the most important thing, because then you realize what we're going to be, we're going to be learning from each other. We're going to be gracious in receiving varieties of stories and experiences. We're going to talk about certain things that will be very relevant to some, not as relevant to others, and they'll just be, and we'll handle it all with grace, and or we'll try to anyway, and an awareness also that we're not bringing all the answers for all the people. I mean, that would be arrogant and silly, that there's going to be a variety, but in that process of coming together and thinking about some things that really matter and looking at research and looking at scripture, we can ourselves grow, but we can also help others, in my experience. So Hilda, what do you think?
I'm thinking, you said it, Mark. That's what I'm thinking. And what I'd like to ask, if the people on our call will begin thinking about the fact that we'd like to have some answers from you before the end of the call. So I think Mark just hit the points I had for this second one, because I am very interested in who you are and what experiences you've had. So if you will begin even putting them in the chat now, but at least thinking about it at the end of our discussion, what we can learn from you, what you'd like to share, because Mark it's interesting. I love the way Mark and I work, because he is so analytical and he's such a researcher, and I'm not. I'm a storyteller. I'm like, well, this is, I'm from my experience, or I ask people to tell stories. In my articles, you will notice that I interview people. So if you are looking for diversity of retirement stories, that's what I say. And there is not a single, as Mark said, retirement story. So I'm going to pass on to number 3, if you're ready, Ryan, because Mark fully, I think, said, but I did want to invite people to begin thinking about what you could tell us.
Well,
let me,
can I just add to that? Yes, and not just now. Like, if, tomorrow you're thinking, oh, I wish I'd thought of this, or I could really use help with this. I mean, that's going to help guide what we do. In fact, there is somebody on our call who is actually responsible for the existence of Flourishing in the Third of Life. He was pastoring in a church he and I were talking about. And I said, what could you really use for your church? So what I really need is a class on Flourishing in the Third of Life. And I thought, huh. And he and his church helped that happen. So we really, really want to respond to your needs, your thoughts, your questions, and not just now, but always, right? So yeah, amen to what Hilda just said.
And I'll just echo. I mean, yeah, I think what Mark said was great. I love the way Hilda and Mark work together. And I really value, Hilda, how you want to tell stories and how you want to highlight those particular individuals and their experiences and what they're going through. And I think that's just something we can do in our groups. So again, I'm leading them right now and kind of thinking about and drawing from what I've seen Hilda do in other spaces. For the first session, I was like, you know what, we're not gonna jump right in. And I was like, I'm gonna bring some good treats. I've been trained that good first session always involves yummy food. I'm in Southern California. There's a place called Porto's, which is a Cuban bakery, and they just make delicious treats and savory snacks. I brought way too much because that's what I feel like a host should do. And we just spent the first session just telling our stories. My question was, what hats do you wear? Right? You're a grandfather or a grandmother. You used to be a worker, but now you're not, or maybe you still are. You're a part of our church, or what church have you been a part of? I kind of framed it as, hey, like what hats do you wear, and how can that help us get to know your story? And based on those hats, like, why are you here? Like, how can this class help you And it just was a wonderful 90 minutes of really getting to know people in my church. And then talking about their lives of work and who they worked with and why they worked, how they stopped working, and sometimes how they were very happy to take off that hat. And sometimes they took it off kind of reluctantly. They didn't want to, but they had to, or they were forced to, or they didn't know what hat they were going to put on. And it just created a lot of space, I think, for what Hilda was saying, for people to share their stories and just let us listen to what they were saying. And then that was the foundation for then the next session for us to jump in and talk about narratives of flourishing and what's going on in our lives. And so I just think thinking about, like, yes, the courses are like, here's 6 sessions and here's 5 sessions, but thinking about, okay, how can you add one up front? And I'm thinking about, how do you end well? I'm definitely going to end with Portos. That's just, again, that's what I'm going to bring some tasty treats.
I
One of my
agree.
promises is I'll bring tasty food in the first session and the last session. That is part of my promise. But how can we do that well? And I think story is a huge piece. And the first one for me is really about, how do we help people tell our stories? How do we hold those stories? And then thinking about the last session, like how do we want our stories to continue? How do we want this class to go there? So I just think, Hilda, your emphasis on storytelling and thinking about how can we create that space? What do the people in our groups need? Like, what questions do we need to ask even before we jump into the content, to let them share some of the stuff, is just really, really important work. And if some of you, I feel like I've heard some of these stories before. If anyone on the screen right now has done that, they're like, oh, I asked this question, or like, I really like to have a first session do this way. Again, we'd love to learn from you here of like how you help bring people in to your groups and listen to them.
Yeah.
Exactly, Ryan. I love that. I love that. What hats do you wear? And then people immediately began to learn from each other and recognize the value in their own story. Just listening, hearing it out loud. It's yeah, I love that. Thanks.
I'm going to move on from that. Was my second question to our third preset question. What do you, Hilda and Mark, what do you think are the biggest challenges pastors and church leaders face when trying to catalyze their third congregation members?
Having worked and tried to build health ministries in congregations across the country, that is such a great question, because, well, the short answer is it's not easy, because there's a church's attention span is pretty limited. I mean, there's so much. Number one, we have the sense that we're here to hear the word, and I've pastored, so yes, that is and disciple people. And so the church has so many pulls on people's attention and time and energy. And one of the saddest refrains I hear at funerals is when they're praising someone, they say, oh, Sister so-and-so was at the church all the time. I mean, she did this and she did that and she did that, which is essentially what the church does take a lot of time and energy that we love. And saying that consistency is what I have learned is not a sense of, well, bam, we're offering this course on third, and you take it or not, and then we're moved on to something else. It has to set the framework. There has to be a framework. Older adult ministries, seasoned saints, whatever the church calls it, it's in the context of an entire ministry. It's not a one and done. It's not, flavor of the day, it is integrated into the identity of the church and the members, that this is something that will be ongoing. And it requires listening to what the members need,
Mm.
and just putting all of that together in something that is beyond bingo. So letting it be a meaningful offering, a meaningful ministry in the church, and because it emerges out of what the people need.
Love that answer. And it's actually a great illustration, Hilda, of how you approach things very much in terms of relationship and listening. And I'm going to start really big. So, and the big thing is, a couple of years ago, the World Health Organization did a giant study and then issued a report on ageism in the world. And their bottom line is half of the people in the world are demonstrably ageist against older people, including many of us who are older people. So it's internalized ageism. And what I mean by ageism, it's not as vicious often as certain kinds of racism or other, there are isms that are really terrible, but it's more just a discounting ageism. It's you know, Hilda, you and I are old enough, we're done now, right? And we don't have much to offer. And so
Right.
that can be said to people, and then many of us begin to internalize that. There was a fascinating study from a professor at Yale, Becca Levy, who looked to see, well, what is the impact of ageism on your own life? If you have negative views of aging, right? You think aging, well, how does that affect your own lifespan, for example? She found that adults who have a negative view of aging die at X, okay, years. Adults who have a positive view of aging tend to die at X plus 7.5. Okay.
Wow.
Ageism and ageist beliefs can have a huge impact on our lives. So on the one hand, that's part of what the question, what do pastors and churches have to deal with? And again, we're not talking mostly about really evil meanness, but just a kind of a writing off or a lack of attention to, or folk in church who actually are gifted and have a lot of life left in them sort of think, I don't have much to contribute. And so I think that's one of the things that we've got to deal with on all kinds of different levels in terms of seeing how God sees us, first of all, and the potential of being older, and then looking at the research that says, hey, there's actually gigantic potential. Now that doesn't deny the losses and challenges and things that are hard, but it opens up new vision and new possibilities. So like I said, you're dealing like with real people, and but somehow
Yeah.
we pull these things together, right?
Yeah.
And I think churches, pastors and churches and but churches are uniquely positioned to bring a word of hope and empowerment to those who are older in a culture that still has a lot of ageism in it. I mean, a big example, we've had two older presidents, and whatever you think of them and their politics doesn't matter. About both people, it's often said they're just too old, as if that's sufficient. Now, if somebody has issues with aging and limitations, that's one thing. But you know, you wouldn't. Well, most of us wouldn't say, "Oh, she can't be president. She's just a woman." He can't be president. He's, you know, he speaks Spanish. But you could say, like, somebody's just too old. So I'm going to stop there. But the point is, I think the church has this extraordinary potential for its own members and for its communities and for the wider culture to bring a new vision of what's possible as we get older. It isn't one that denies the challenges and the losses, but it really just opens up all kinds of potential.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. And love what you said about reminding ourselves that we are created in the image of
Yeah,
God. That, oh my gosh, our divinity alone just wipes out all kinds of negative narratives, isms,
yeah,
and just recognizing that. So thank you for
yeah.
the pastoral part as well as the research. I continue to be amazed at how you pull these figures out of your head. I'm like, wow, wow. And I'm astonished. And so thank you for those, for the data that supports what we know
Well,
intuitively.
you are welcome, and I just would thank the Dupree Center for making that possible for me to do that work, and valuing it, which was a stretch for us because initially we really were focusing on people in the workplace and leaders in, and it sort of emerged as we began working with many of those folk who, as they were getting older, wait, there's this whole other thing that opens up the potential. And the Dupree Center, I mean, Ryan, you started out talking about we're helping folk throughout life, and I just, so for me, yeah, I care about this, but there was the kind of institutional support, and still is, that enables this work to continue.
And that matters a lot. And that, as you said, the church, the institution, the church. So in response to that third question, the biggest challenge is our structures, that our structures, how do we make our structures so that we have to call it out and say that, well, we're being ignored. We're in the third of our lives and we're being ignored. You have this for the children, this for the youth, this for the midlife people. What about us? We want a fun day. At my church, they have a month for seniors.
Wow.
Because they have a month for children. They have a month for young adults, for you. So we seniors wear a particular color every Sunday that month. Not that you can't recognize, it's just like children, you can recognize who the children are. So, but those of us who pretend that they can't recognize it, we wear the colors.
Yes, we give away our identity. Yeah, I had a guy at church a couple of months ago. He was talking to me, and he's in the third of life, and he was asking me all these questions, and which was, it's just interesting. And finally he said, "How old are you?" So I told him, I'm 68. Oh, I thought you were much older than me.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
And I wasn't put off. It just cracked me up. But anyway, I like wearing the older person color thingy.
Yeah, it's fun, and it acknowledges the fact that these people who are older adults matter, just like the children. It's not just a children's month and a youth month. It's an older adults month. And then there's a week where there's a conference throughout in that month. September is the month for older adults. And there's a week where there's an actual conference. And I'm trying to get third curriculum during that week. That's my goal. And so just prioritizing the work of older adults, the lives of older adults. And we have some internal work. I have internal work to do. Yesterday, I was at a golf tournament, and we had to place crates, I mean, little things of water, it was big. And so they said, well, Hilda, would you go in and help put the water in the coolers? I mean, and they were heavy. And so at first I was going to struggle. I thought, oh, let me try to do this. But I didn't want to say my age so they can be like, oh, people can't do it. Oh, you're old. So go over there. Don't even try. So I just said, well, I'm not as strong as I look. So that's what I told them. So I said, I'll just pour the ice into the coolers. So I have to wrap my head around, how do I present in a group so that I'm not making an excuse saying, oh, I don't know technology because I'm a certain age. Oh, you know how old people are. No, we can't do that ourselves.
Well, I got a couple things then I want to add because I love this. Okay, first of all, there is this passage in the Bible. I can't remember the exact chapter. I think it's in Numbers somewhere, talking about the Levites and how when the Levites, they're carrying the heavy stuff at the temple, but when they turn 50,
right,
they don't those people don't have to carry the stuff anymore, but they can serve the younger people. So there's really this acknowledgement that you may not be able to carry the water forever, but there's still something to be done.
okay.
And I just think that's good. And then I had something else I was going to say, and now I can't remember it, but it would have been good. that's part
Mark,
of what
I won't say it's your age. I won't.
well
I will not.
it is true that certain things slip one's mind when one's older. And it's kind of funny, but it'll come back tomorrow.
Well, I find this really helpful for a lot of reasons. Also, we've found in the chat Numbers 8. Numbers 8 is the passage that.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. I see you.
Yeah, it would be Steve. Thanks, buddy.
Thinking about how do you catalyze change in a church, in our communities, maybe in our families. There's layers here. There's national cultural things that Mark was bringing up in this large study. There's organizational and structures and systems, some that can be ageist, or I think even what Hilda was saying, some that are just overtaxed. They're just overworked. We're trying to do too much. How do you add something in there? And then we have our own personal work, our own work as individuals of how do we think about these things? How do we need to be changed? And then how does our change maybe inform organizational change that informs larger cultural change? That's just saying that it's layered. It's layered, and it'll take a lot of people. I do wonder if, a couple of things that you said, Hilda, and you said, Mark, I wonder if it just could be helpful here is, one, Hilda, you mentioned well, churches, they have to do this, and they have to have discipleship work, and then they have to have this, that there is a world where these third courses, this third work could feel separate from discipleship work. But in some sense, it really shouldn't, right? But that to actually integrate it, to have those shared frameworks, to understand this flourishing, helping people flourish and find purpose in the third of life, is just an extension of discipleship. It's a contextualization of the church's discipleship into a particular age group. I think can help that. And again, for what Mark was saying, Dupree has our own history here of Mark at one point felt really called to engage this third work. And as the previous executive director of the center and someone whom we all love and trust, we kind of were like, well, we trust you, but we don't really know how it fits. we trust this vision, but for a while couldn't figure out how do all the pieces fit together. And when they didn't fit together, it did feel like extra work. It was like, well, we're doing some of this faith work stuff over here, and then we have the third stuff over there. And then really in the past year and a half, really being able to land on this vision of, oh, we're equipping leaders in the thirds of life.
Wow.
Made it so that was like, oh, we're doing this, we're doing shared work. And Mark focuses in this third, and some of our resources focus on this third. And just organizationally, it felt, you could feel the difference from, we're kind of doing things and it's kind of similar, but it's more parallel and it feels like double work, to, oh, we're working together. And what Mark does, and what we do in the third helps us over here, and what we do over here can help what we do in the third and shape what some of the resources Mark puts out. And that's just saying, even in our own history, when that framing can connect, and then you can kind of see how this third work is an extension of the mission of the church broadly, but whatever the particular mission of your local church is, it really does change the experience from doing, oh, this is another thing someone's asking me to do. Like, okay, this is another curriculum we have to run or another project we have to do. Who has time for this? To like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing anyways. This is our work anyways, and it kind of gets enfolded into the larger thing. So just some of those pieces there of like trying to talk about this as discipleship work, folding it into the larger mission, and then eventually over time. And for us at Dupree, it took a couple of years, right, Mark? It took a couple of years to really get there. So this is a slow, can be a slow process. I think other places can move faster than us, but when you get there, it is really great.
Some do, many don't. Churches are often very slow-moving institutions, and I say that as one who loves the church and been pastor of it and stuff. But I think often, especially somewhat historically, the assumption is what ministry is like with older adults is basically entertaining them, giving them field trips and luncheons, and those can be fine things. And
bingo.
Yeah, and bingo. You mentioned, Hilda, beyond bingo, and it was sort of like, we got to entertain these people. And again, I'm not altogether critical of that, but what is missing is, on the one hand, well, what would it be for help these people actually now live as disciples of Jesus in this season of life? It's discipleship. And it's also saying, we have in this group of people some extraordinary talent and wisdom and in many cases energy and love. And these people are mostly, or and often they're if they're not sitting on the pew, they're sitting on the bench. They're sort of like, how can we help them get into the game for their sake and for the sake of the church? I mean, I have said sometimes that I think I really still believe the greatest untapped resource in the church today is our older adults. Mm-hmm. And so there's the potential for those who are older to have a huge impact and make a difference, and then flourish in the midst of it. Because when we're doing things that matter, we do well personally. And again, it's not denying the realities of getting older, but it's not being so bound by them that we hold back ourselves, we hold back our older adults, we hold back our churches.
Amen.
Yeah. Elder, this is why you and I got connected, because I was doing research. I'm reading, and there's this article in Christianity Today. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like us. I can't believe it. So we reached out, and thus began a friendship, and thus began a working relationship and a partnership, because it's this shared vision. But as you've said, you bring aspects that I wouldn't bring, and that's been a real enrichment for us.
I love that. We have time for one more question. Again, if anything is coming up for anyone, please put it in the chat. Or if there's anything you'd want to contribute to what we're saying, ways that you've seen change in your church, you've done something, an experience change, or experience your congregation getting behind, or your community getting behind this vision. Anything you've learned, again, put it in the chat. We can happy to shout it out and share that with others, and that we can then also learn from you as we continue.
I should mention two resources.
Oh, please.
In response to what you just said. Number one, a book called Baby Boomers and Beyond by Amy Hansen. Amy is a gerontologist, awesome person. She's done some work for us. And done a ton of work with the church. I literally do not know any person in our country who is stronger when it comes to older adulthood in the church than Amy. And her book, Baby Boomers and Beyond, it's a few years old, so every now and then you'd say, oh, that, but it's still excellent. And if you're saying, how do we get going? What do we do? That's the book. The other thing is an event that we're a part of, and Amy's a part of, and some other leaders, Steve, who's on the phone, which at least in the past was called the Third Roundtable. It might get rebranded at some point, but it's in the first week of March, where it's going to be held at a church in Omaha. And basically what we do is get together some really wise folk who are doing this work from churches and others, and we learn from each other, and we teach each other, and we have a fun time together. If you're interested in that, if you let the Dupree Center know, and I noticed that Trish has put in like the connect, let us know that you're interested in that. We'll make sure you get information on it. Like I said, it's the first weekend in March in Omaha, and it's an awesome time.
Great. Just calling out, we have a Fairhaven Church in Dayton, Ohio, who's used the Repurposed Promise book to help the 55 and older crowd in their church find their niche and serve. So last question, and we can keep it short. We've kind of been answering it, but I do want to raise it because it's interesting. Again, I'm leading it in my church, and I put it in the bulletin, and I'm leading it. It was interesting to find people walk up to me and go, "I think I'm supposed to be in your group, but I think I'm going to go to this Bible one over here." And I went, "Ooh, that's interesting," and didn't know if that was just the one on kind of larger biblical themes was more interesting. Didn't know if maybe they didn't want to quite yet self-identify as a thirder, and there was something there. They're like, "I don't know if I want to go there quite yet," or maybe even the Bible one felt a little safer because ours, right? These really does explore issues of what's going on in our life and what can help us flourish. But all that to say is, talking about it sometimes we need a nuance how we talk about it. So this question, again, we kind of mentioned it before, but what have you found that's been helpful in terms of talking about issues of third, or these classes in particular, that really engages people, that gets them to want to know more, get them to want to sign up? And even like, right, third is kind of specific language that we use that maybe not everyone is familiar with. But so just, are there anything you have in mind, or what are helpful ways to think about communicating this to our churches or anybody that can really help get them engaged and interested?
Please, Mark.
You know, in some ways, and we're going to sound sort of like we're saying the same thing over. It's the same challenge in any season of life in a church, right? You know, you have some program for young parents, but many young parents don't come because, you know, they're busy, and you generally need to connect at some point of felt need, pain points we would often talk about today, something. And so, yeah, some folk are not going to be there yet, and that's okay, right? Some people, absolutely. I mean, the funny thing is some churches have what they call the seniors ministry, but for many who are my age, 68, they think of seniors ministry as for their parents, not for them, right? And it just, so some of us don't want to kind of admit where we are, but if you can connect with what are the things people are really wrestling with, thinking about, and there are a lot of obvious ones. Some of them we've mentioned. We mentioned purpose. That's one of the big things. A whole lot of folk are saying, I don't know what my purpose in life is anymore. Then there's some really practical things. Churches have had some great way to reach people working on grandparenting kinds of issues, et cetera, et cetera. Health. Hilda mentions health. I mean, that's one of the things that folk in our season of life are thinking a lot about and dealing with. So again, I think it's a lot about, number one, it's about doing things that are going to connect with people. But then number two, it's when it matters to people and they tell their friends. So the first flourishing class, you might get 4 people and you're kind of discouraged. But if those 4 have a good experience, they go tell their friends, next time you might have 20. That's huge. Hilda, what do you think?
Consistency again with all of this. As you said, if you stop after 4 people, if 4 people show up and you're expecting 40, then it's a flash in the pan, and it's the idea is gone and the opportunity is gone. So just continuing, being persistent. Anything getting started in the church requires persistence. And of course, we say social media, but what does that mean for I'm not on Facebook. Someone asked me, sent something. It's on Instagram. I said, yeah, I do have an Instagram account, but I'm not on Instagram. She said, oh, you sound like my mother. I said, yes, I'm your grandmother's age, probably. But it's still, though, there are people in the third who are on social media. My sister is active. I mean, she's posting and she's sending things. So not assuming that just because it's a third, that people are not active on social media. So in addition to the bulletin and social media, newsletters, blogs, handouts, the old-fashioned way, just handing out flyers, pastoral announcements. That has been the biggest way to let people know that this matters. For the pastor to repeatedly talk about the program. People are paying attention.
Good. Yeah, I remembered the story I forgot. Told it would come. But it's a great illustration of people not writing themselves off or are thinking because you're old, you can't do things. So I've done some work for a church in Pasadena, California, where I live, Lake Avenue Church. They've got some really amazing classes of way older adults. I mean, one class has been around over 50 years. And when COVID hit, of course, especially for older adults, they couldn't meet anymore. So like, what are we going to do? Well, there was a woman in that class who at the time was 91 years old who said, well, she's going to learn how to do like video and webinars and all the tech. And she dove in and she learned all this tech so that they were able to begin to have their class again virtually. Now that they're back in person, they realize, wait a minute, a lot of our members who are really quite old, I mean, they're folk in their 90s, they can't come anymore, but we can now do it. She loves this thing. She's awesome at it. And she wasn't like a physicist or an engineer. She was like a woman who had an excitement and a sense of calling. And she is running this really awesome tech-based ministry for her Sunday school class of people who are mostly in their 80s and 90s. Yeah.
Love
and
that.
She is so into it. When I go to speak at her class, I mean, she's one of my heroes because I think, man, way to go.
Indeed.
Well, I love that. And I think it's a great story to end on, of just not writing yourself off and doing it in service of others, doing it in service of relationships, of connection, of a way that's producing good fruit. And on Hilda's last word of just consistency. I know Hilda and Mark, you two are models of consistency in this third work of writing, of thinking, of encouraging. And again, everyone who's on this webinar now and who are watching this, you're models of consistency in your own congregations and communities, of showing up, of wanting people to change, of wanting to serve your organizations and get this word out. So I'm really grateful there. Thank you, Mark and Hilda. Thank you, everyone who was here for these questions. Anything else that came up, please, like Mark said, like Trish put in the chat, please reach out to us. Email us at connect@dupree.org. Reach out to Mark, anyone else. We want to hear from you. We want to support you. We want to equip you and just keep this conversation going. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ryan.
No,
and Trish, thank you for getting all that stuff out.